G'day legends, I hope that you're having a fantastic day wherever that you are. Now today we do have a fair bit to go over. We're going to be looking at the maps. We're going to look at new strikes both from Russia and Ukraine. We need to talk about a funny vehicle that has turned up on the front line. The main bulk of this video is going to actually be talking about recruitment and from Ukrainians, some of the issues that they are seeing with volunteering for the military. And we've spoken a bit about this, but I think this really pulls together all the problems we're seeing there as we hear more and more from officials, commanders, everyone about this manpower shortage in Ukraine and people suggesting ways that this actually can be fixed. We need to look at a claim of a ship being damaged, another ship. We need to look at Blackhawks operating and multiple drone strikes against the nuclear power plant or a nuclear power plant, as well as AI drone targeting, which we know is the next evolution in drones, as scary as that is. And of course, I believe that with technology of drones, we're just at the beginning and it's going to just be crazy of where it ends up. But firstly, on this channel, I try and be as open with you guys as possible. Now, you all know that I missed a few days last week for a family emergency where I had to travel interstate where a loved one had gone into intensive care. Now, last night I received news that someone I love very much has passed away. Now, as much as this saddens me, I once again have the opportunity to reflect on just how lucky we are to be given this opportunity in the infinite possibility of life. And again, how lucky we are to have those that we love, even if it's just for, a limited amount of time. So I will be having some time off for family time as I've got some other stuff going on as well as time for the funeral and travel. But I just want to say I really appreciate you guys as my audience. You've changed my life. And I do apologize about the consistency on this channel not being what it normally is, and maybe the effect it'll have on my reporting as well. But just thank you for your understanding. Now that's something sad out of the way, we need to talk about something that at least was a little bit funny, at least the name of it. So this customized Russian tank that people are naming the Blyatmobile, which I just found funny. I know laughing at things in war, one thing, but this is funny. So a Russian tank here has been covered in extra armor. Now, as much as people are taking piss out of this, I did see a post going, yeah, but if you were in this convoy, I'd probably want to be in the one with the extra armor as well. And I did actually have a think about, will we see something like this? Because of the drones, the ATGM, or actually no, more the drone threat and the mine threat, will we saw the heavy tanks came and went with little success, like your really heavy tanks. But with like the drones, may we see something like that come back as just like a battle taxi in? Because that's the problem, is just getting guys to where they need to be for the infantry, for just the amount of drones. Maybe in the future evolution, we will see that. But of course, this isn't that. It's just extra armor welded on the side. Now, this is in Krasnohorivka, where we do know that Russia tried to get into and had a failure in here. So into here, they're trying that break-in, didn't really work. And there's actually footage of this. I'll put it on the Telegram if you'd like to see it. But we see then the convoy coming down here. Now, this is sped up 2 times, but this is the Blyatmobile down here with Batman aboard. And these vehicles then, I'll just skip through this. It'll be in the Telegram, but they try and get in, and then they're under incredibly heavy artillery shelling, and then they are forced to then turn away and retreat back into the lines. But I will say the Blyatmobile did survive. Credit to it. Now, Suryak had this, and we've mentioned this the other day, but it was mentioned that Russian troops were intensifying their efforts to enter Krasnohorivka from the east. The recent video confirmed this is that video, that these attempts ended in failure despite the initial breakthrough at the eastern farms, as troops didn't manage to consolidate positions there. So you break in is one thing, but then you need to actually consolidate and hold those positions. So of course, talking down in here, that east movement, then the northern movement, both of which haven't had great results. Now, one big thing that we hear more and more about is the manpower shortage in Ukraine. Not only that is happening, but it's going to get worse potentially if things aren't fixed. Now, we saw this over, Kiev Independent reported on this, and then I actually found the original Facebook post from the Ukrainian Ground Forces commander speaking about this. Now, that's the wrong one. We want, this one here. Now, I understand how much manipulation and negativity will sprinkle now, but our goal is one and common: for victory. Russia is trying to shake our backs. So this discourse, I believe, panic, distrust in the army. The enemy is spending crazy resources on it. So using bots, trolls, everything like this to try and change this, as well as just the informational space. And this is something that is happening massively, whether it is NAFO, whether it is Russian bots, whatever on each side, is this massive informational war. It's the invisible front line. And if you'd like to actually know more on this, the university near me did a whole study mathematically on the use by Ukraine and by Russia on astroturfing bots. Incredibly fascinating. I actually had a sit-down coffee with the mathematicians who did it. They weren't prepared to go publicly with me, but I had to talk about it, and they sent me all their stuff. And in this video here, I go fully over that. If you'd like to watch it, just search for that, as well as we did have then the Washington Post talk about this today. Russian trolls target US support for Ukraine, Kremlin documents show. So trying to undermine that and put in different narratives. That said, I'm in the informational space of this war, and I think, yes, bots have an influence, but I think currently with Ukraine, their own worst enemy is their own claims and backing those up. And you're going to see this with some of the information about this specific post. But we know that in this online space, especially with AI, astroturfing, all of this is going to get almost impossible to control. Once those videos I saw one today of Jordan Peterson talking that looked exactly like him speaking. And once that gets better and better, people like me, we're all stuffed, but also are officials, especially heading into an election now. But this is about recruiting. But no matter what, how much help we get, no matter how much weapons we have, we lack people. The equipment does not drive itself. The weapons do not shoot itself. The drone will not fly itself. Units need an upgrade. We need you. Russian propagandists have made many believe that mobilization is not about protecting their state from the aggressor, but about injustice and a violation of rights. So that it's not, mobilization is taking away your rights, you're being conscripted. It's not about that protection. Now, this is what he's saying. Now, the TCC, these are recruiters. So like the same as a military recruiter in the US or Australia, or wherever. But today, most of the TCC employees are yesterday's warriors, whom everyone admired and was proud of. What has happened? Why are they hiding from them today? Why do they allow themselves to disrespect them, make bullies, and even fight? This is unacceptable. Now, these are the same guys we see out on the ground that do call people up, and yep, you're getting, sent away. You're being then conscripted. Now, let's look at the second part of this before then we look at something a little bit more interesting. Let's just clean up where I'm talking about, and then we have the second part of what he talks about here. Military servicemen, veterans, are not not agitators. These are people that have done their constitutional duty. Yes, the recruiting system is not perfect. All citizens of Ukraine must keep their heads cool and realize one simple truth: the army and the people are inseparable. So there are civilians pushing back against this. Let's throw away the scarecrows and manipulations and deal with what it really is. Did you receive a subpoena, or yourself came to the recruitment to update the data? It does not mean that you will go to storm enemy positions tomorrow. This is a lie. There's a law-defined procedure, blah, blah, blah. Everyone who was found fit for service without exemption are sent to training centres. Basic general training lasts a month. It meets the standards of NATO partner countries 4 weeks. I don't know where you got this from. Typically, basic training, whether it's Yanks, Aussies, wherever, is between 10 and 14 weeks, depending. So at minimum at 2.5 times that length, and that is basic training. So my training initially when I got in was 12 weeks basic, where you learnt basically basic soldiering stuff, but you're nowhere near being competent. And then 14 or 15 weeks, I believe 15 weeks, because there's a week 0 that doesn't count. 15 weeks at the School of Infantry, where you're maybe competent, and then you come out from there. You're deployable at the end of that 27-week, 28-week mark. But from my experience, you're still not very competent on the ground until at least a year or 2 in. But I don't know where that lines up with the NATO standard. Anyway, yes, the preparation system is not perfect, but we respond to all problems and challenges. Our abilities to prepare recruits for effective combat are no worse than in most other armies. Well, you've got a war going on, so it's not going to be as good. After undergoing basic general training, soldiers enter their military units and not necessarily in combat positions. Saying you're not going to be just chucked on the front line straight away, but not necessarily. You can be as well. And we've had plenty of evidence of guys recruited, given minimal training, and onto the front line. We saw especially that in like Bakhmut, areas like that, of course. So, and talking about that, we need more people and the reasons you should be signing up. Now, what I found really interesting under this was then the comments. Now, I'm going to play out 2 comments, but you can go have a look for yourself. Now, I do know I just spoke about bots. So, yes, I had a look through these people, and what I found was I don't believe that these people are bots, and I'll tell you why, but most of the comments are about the terms of service and demobilisation. We know Zelensky a few weeks ago shot down the suggestion by the courts of demobilising guys after 3 years or 18 months on the front line. And the majority of comments are about this. Now, these comments that I've just chosen, I've been through their profiles as far back as I can go, some of them over a decade, and then I can see interactions back and forward between friends well before 2022, tagged photos, all of this. So to my eye, these are not bots. If it's 10 years old with some of this and tagged and whatever, but I do see that bots could have a play in this, and I've also kept their identity hidden because it's one thing to an audience here, but of course a very much larger audience maybe that I will expose people to. I don't want to get anyone hurt or in trouble, but this was the top one. Here are 8 fundamental arguments why currently no one will voluntarily go to the army. Now, as well, these are off guys in Ukraine. These are Ukrainians. The tagged photos, they're in Ukraine, in Kyiv, and in some of the tagged photos, they're also easily delivering aid to the front line from what I've seen. One of them actually served. Now, number 1, no shells, no artillery, no modern frontline fortifications. Give me guns and shield, and then we'll talk. And this is what we see. We hear about weapon shortage. Why would you want to volunteer if you're hearing that? Like, shit. 2, no deadline for mobilisation, demobilisation. Once you get to the benches of the ZSU and leave this place, you're either 200 or 300. So either killed or wounded is the only way then you get off the front line. That demobilisation, the shooting down by Zelensky of 18 months or 18 months combat or 3 years in, that is the main concern I see in all of the comments. Number 3, shopping centres usually behave like this. So people there beating, grabbing, stealing from the streets. Even if they are veterans 100 times, their actions are disgraceful. One case is enough, and they're far from one. So saying that what they see from soldiers isn't what is fitting to be part of it. Number 4, total corruption on all levels. Border guards, humanitarian, judges, officials, police. A man can steal $5 million from the budget, get out on bail and avoid punishment. Shame, betrayal and beacon to be replaced with life imprisonment and confiscation of all property. That if you're caught of this, that is what should happen to you, he's saying. Number 5, general mobilisation is not general. Both sons of Poroshenko, acting deputy of VRU, do not serve, not mobilise and rest abroad. Hundreds of thousands of such deputies, judges and policemen are hiding their children. They have to go first. Even the circus got the right to reserve. Mobilisation goes only for those who have no money or status to avoid this process. We do know if you've got money, you can get out. Now, he mentions the circus. This was on the head of the Kyiv Independent just today. Ukraine's circus TV channels recognised as critically important companies, allowing employees to defer military service. So Culture Ministry recognised TV channels, blah, 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 as critically important, allowing some employees to defer military service according to decrees published on the ministry's websites. And this is coming as we see this then ramp up. The status has also been given to the Directorate of Mobile Circus Teams, the State Circus Company, as well as circuses, theatres, operas, and other cultural institutions across Ukraine, where 50% or more employees are of these critical important companies, so then they can then defer. So this is what people are going, well, what the fuck? If I'm being called up, how does this look if they're deferring, as well as our leaders have children abroad, or then they're not, signing up to fight? Number 6, if we have a duty to the state, then we have rights. Closed borders. This is all men hostage holding. You are given no choice how to help in this war, and the choice in whether you want to participate in it. In your own country, took the right move and the right to your own life. You are now a slave whose life belongs to the state. If anyone wants to go and die or win for something, it should be his personal, conscious, motivated choice, not an order from the authorities that are not at the front. The choice for each individual life must be in the hands of the owner of that life, not the power. Otherwise, it's just totalitarian Russia 2.0, not a free, independent, and democratic Ukraine where every life is valued. Number 7, the equipment of the army is so bad that people collect every day for clothes, foods, drones, and a lot of other things. Saying to join the army that cannot supply you everything you need for a war, for war is suicide. And this comes back into that number 1 point about there's no shells or artillery, and we see the public fundraising for just basic equipment on the front line too, which concerns me. When people are raising for night vision goggles, body armor, helmets, clothing, combat gear, that concerns me. Where did that stuff, the amount of stuff that the West sent at the beginning of the war, hundreds of thousands of sets of body armor, cams, all of this, where did that stuff end up? And you do see in Ukraine, at least when I was there, from the West, there's far better fitted out guys in the West in moderately peaceful areas. There's no active fighting. To the east, the equipment gets worse and worse because it's been handed as it's gone in. Number 8, only 4 damn weeks into combat training, yet no civilian has ever held a weapon. I'm sorry, I don't care what training is getting done in 4 weeks. I've held a weapon in warlike service before, so I think I have some speaking on this. 4 weeks is not even close to enough to enter the most challenging environment of warfare we've ever seen. If this is NATO standard, then it does not fit the real condition. So even if this is a standard, it doesn't meet the condition that's actually happening, especially if you've never even held a weapon. Even if you are already summoned without your consent, even if you don't have sons of deputies, judges, policemen around you, even if you won't have the shells of protection, even if humanitarian aid won't reach you because of the corruption, even if you the way home is either 200 or 300 killed or wounded, yet all this at least teach you have worth and more. At least teach you have worth and more than 4 weeks. P.S. Whether you like it or not, but such are the realities of the modern life of an ordinary citizen who did not flee Ukraine, but stayed because he thought that although you are not a warrior, you'll be able to benefit and be the foundation behind the backs of real military officers who lived only this 4 years. So again, I think it's very interesting to look at what is being said here. This is from another one of these comments. Again, I checked these accounts. I checked as much as I could. I have many questions after reading this post. Number 1, what does winning mean? Borders, 1991, or what? What is actually the realistic, what is a win here? What actually is it? And it needs to be a realistic goal. Number 2, how much more do you need to mobilize for people to achieve? So how many more people do you need? At least pretty much sums it up. So if we get X amount, it can't just be an ongoing, never-ending piece of string, as well as sort of going into this is the overarching goal. Number 3, if the orcs mobilize times more, then what? So what if Russia just keep mobilizing as well? Do we just continue on the same path? Number 4, who will pay for all this and people and weapons and ammunition if already now there are big problems with money and with the desire of action to invest in the defeat of Russia? So we know there's problems with money. And of course, if you're in Ukraine, you're already seeing the shell and manpower issues, and you're seeing that the US has money issues of that money coming out. Well, that's not good signs for you to then go and sign up. Number 5, are existing people in the military used rationally? Do dozens or hundreds of roadblocks are necessary in the backward cities where thousands of military are involved? So if you've ever been to Ukraine, whether it's Lviv or Kyiv or any of these spots, there are hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of checkpoints absolutely everywhere with territorial defense or soldiers or whatever on these. Are they being used rationally? But I think as well, are they being used rationally on the front line also? And these are legitimate questions that this patriotism, hurrah shit, it's easy for us to sit back, or you on Twitter or X on Twitter, and go blah, blah, blah. But these people are actually facing it. These people sitting in wherever they are in Ukraine, they're actually facing this. And yeah, like just this hurrah sort of defense of the nation shit now more than 2.5 years in the war, there are questions that want to be answered if you're willing to go down and lay your life. Not everyone wants to sign up militarily as well. And so Ukraine will continue this recruitment struggle until I think those multiple people lay out good arguments and good problems that need to be overcome for that solution. Now, Ukraine has released, this is going around everywhere, is developing an unstoppable AI-powered attack drone with Western backing. That the defense minister says weapons that homes in on target autonomously will be less susceptible to Russian electronic blockers. Now, we've spoken about this, that in an EW environment, you either need a set target that then the drone has some level of Faraday cage and autopilot can switch on and off. You can have Faraday cages that close and open, and then you set target. That's most likely from that robotics drone guy that he sent over to us, if you've been watching this for a while, of how the Kremlin got hit in an EW black zone. Or you need some optical targeting like this that's all on board EW environment. But drone is launched, goes out, sees the target, and comes in. Now, again, what I want to talk about is it's using either optical or thermal targeting, and it's going to relay something that it's seen before and line that up with what it's looking for and then hit it. For at least a long time, this is still going to be very susceptible to decoys on the ground, so we'll probably see an increase in decoys if this happens, as well as Ukraine and Russia use a lot of similar weapon systems, all the way from MiG aircraft, some of the MiGs, through to BMPs, tanks, whatever on the ground. So that's going to be a problem. Although I know it'll have, geo-gating on where it can strike. But as well, this is why we're probably going to see things like tires on airframes for Russia, and as well as painted on the ground. That this may actually trick these. It may actually work. As dumb as it sounds, if you're coming top down on that, how good are these systems? Well, none of us can say, but we're probably going to see a lot more of that. And AI drones scare the shit out of me. Now, where do we go next? Let's look at these claims by Ukrainian GUR about a ship being heavily damaged. Now, and what I will say is the same is released of these claims of all the airframes in Russia as well. So we're looking for more evidence before we confirm any of this. But missile ship, this burned out in Russia, details of damage. April 7th, territory of the enemy's naval base in the Kaliningrad region of Russia. Now, if you don't know where Kaliningrad is, it's this part over here that sits between Poland and Lithuania, so where this red border is out into the Baltic Sea. There's been some missions out here before. Maybe this is where Nord Stream runs or doesn't run through here. Anyway, Russian vessel Project This launched the aggressor state in 2015. A fire inside a rocket ship, its means of communication and automation were completely destroyed. So comms, automation, apparently there's heavy damage to this. The noise no bounds to be continued. So it'll take a long time to recover this ship. So there is a video released here that's not showing that much, but this is by the official GUR. So we see this being said here, and this says April 7th, territory of the enemy naval base, Kaliningrad region, was disabled due to fire. Then we see this is the ship. Then we see this next bit of writing here that is due to fire inside the ship, means of communication automation were then destroyed. And then we see some of the plans here. And then we see this thing here, whatever this is, and setting alight. So we don't know. We know that ships, the biggest enemy to ships is fire. That's why people in the Navy practice so many fire drills, but there's also a lot of fire suppression systems. So we don't know, but with any claims, sorry, from the bloody dozens of now aircraft that we don't have evidence for, the minimum 5 or 6 ships that were claimed in Crimea too, that we don't have evidence for yet, bar some satellite imagery, going to need more than that to convince me. That's how things happen. Now, we've seen a lot of strikes against Kharkiv overnight. We've seen a lot of strikes against Kharkiv in general and other areas. We know those FABs and missiles keep coming in as well as drones. But I found this interesting sent from a friend as well. A trader was inside. Trader helped the track find and follow the new MLRS, this 220mm. It was a mix of factors, sad story and a shame. This was about what was hit in Kharkiv the other day. Front's challenging, enemy losses are extensive. Seems to be a lot of leaks in Ukraine. Yes, there are some people who are traitors to Ukraine who are promised financial rewards for helping the enemy, but they never got it, and all their assets are seized, and they did end up with nothing and a custodial sentence. So saying they've tracked down those traitors that happened. We're seeing this go both ways. Same with that, the traitor who flew the helicopter into Ukraine, had his other crew killed, and then he was actually killed in Spain, I believe, as well. This financial incentive to get someone to betray. So it's seeming that it's going both ways. It's nothing new, but we know that. Now, speaking of Kharkiv, Zelensky has this: Kharkiv every day and night, the city is subject to heinous Russian attacks, but we are making every effort to provide better protection for it, that our partners can assist with air defense and exerting pressure on Russia. So they need air defense in and more pressure on Russia, but we know that Kharkiv is in a bad way at the moment with multiple different strikes. We also have a strike here against fuel and supplies in Kharkiv as well, said to be by an Iskander. Now, one thing we do know is the Iskanders have seemed to have a lot more success recently in Ukraine than they have had before. So we see these trucks here looking like they are carrying fuel, this train line here. Oh, sorry, skipping too far back. Train, and then hit with then an Iskander there. What would cause major damage. An Iskander is a very large bomb. Now as well, we have this by an Iskander as well, said to be Ukrainian S-300 system here. So we do see this explosion, airburst, shrapnel Iskander here. Now, one thing people have said is there's no secondaries on this. So this may be a decoy. Typically when you hit air defense, if it is the launcher, if it hasn't launched, then you will have secondary. So again, this isn't a complete confirmation yet, I believe. So you can see these systems down in here, but with everything, before there's real confirmation of things, we always take things not on surface level here. Now, Zaporizhzhia, where we will talk about in a second, we're seeing more and more fabs being dropped into here by Russian Su-34 aircraft. So this area down here, these warehouses, and we also know that Su-25 are flying over here. So the air defense must be minimal here as well. We know Ukraine has a huge air defense problem. So there we go on that area. And I'll show you the geolock of this. So it's this right here. So behind the line, Zaporizhzhia, let's get a measured distance. We know Russia's about to here. So only 4 Ks behind the front line. We know these can go a long way in, but these would have been fired from well back. And the more that front line moves, the further the air defense and troops have to be back, the further reach in those glide bombs are then going to have. Wrong thing open. Now, we know as well that in Zaporizhzhia, of course, in here, in Zap itself, there has been more Iskander strikes as well. So this is against a warehouse that Russia says was developing drones in here. So we see an Iskander strike and the aftermath of then this warehouse. We actually have some close-up footage here as well. So, of course, massive explosion there. And we know, again, those Iskanders need to be hit with something like Patriot, and they seem to have a lot more success as well against energy plants and in places like Zap as well as Odessa, because air defense is being allocated into other areas of Ukraine. Now, let's have a look at this Blackhawk in Kozinka. Now, where is Kozinka? Belgorod Oblast up here. We then will see Graveron, Kozinka here. So in then Russian territory. We actually had some footage come out yesterday. I didn't speak about it. Maybe I should have, but we see this here. Now, 2 Blackhawks were given from private firms to Ukraine, and we see that these then landing, dropping off troops, and then flying back. Now, one thing I'll say with all these crossings into Russia, is the juice worth the squeeze? What I see again and again is some of the best soldiers, some of the best equipment being either risked or lost for PR victories that I think backfired more so than they got anything out of being risked here. But there's then more footage has come out. All this will be on the Telegram if you want to watch it, because I know we're getting a bit long in the tooth of this video. But from helmet cam footage, the Russians said they have seized off these soldiers once they were then killed. So the Russians released this footage, and of course this is the landing of then these aircraft and then fighting through here. So yeah, it's just interesting. Now we need to go back into Zaporizhzhia, and we need to look at the Enerhodar nuclear power plant. Here's the cooling pond. Here is Nikopol, and we've seen a strike yesterday by a drone. Everyone pointed fingers whose was whose. Most people said that it was Ukraine's, I could see from the mainstream media, but either way. But we have reports of more strikes on this here. So Russia-controlled Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, a power station just announced another drone was shot down today over the roof over the reactor number 6. According to Reuters, today a kamikaze drone was shot down over the plant. It fell on the roof of number 6. Now, here we have from the IAEA, confirmed physical impact of drones at ZNPP today at one of its 6 reactors. 1 casualty reported. Damage to 6 was not compromised nuclear safety, but of course it is a serious incident. And then we have from the head, this Rafael Grossi, the head of the IAEA, that confirmed at least 3 direct hits in ZNPP main reactor containment structures took place. This cannot happen. Now, As I said, with the UN Security Council, blah, 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 Board of Governors, no one can conceivably benefit or get any military or political advantage from attacks against nuclear facilities. This is a no-go. I disagree with this in the informational space for false flags, for interventions from other countries, all of this. I disagree with this. I'm not saying it should be done. At all costs, it should not be done. But same as dams being hit, same as pipelines being hit, whatever, the same as what happened in Moscow, all of these attacks, whether it's false flag, whether it's not, there is benefit in this wider, if that makes sense, if I'm putting it together for you. I firmly appeal to military decision makers to abstain from any action violating the basic principles that protect nuclear facilities. We know these facilities are going to become a larger and larger target as things keep going through this war, as well as things like dams, etc. You know where I'm getting at. Now, let's have a look at the maps here. Sorry, we're a little bit long, but the MOD Deep State map has updated, so we do have some to look over. But here is Ukraine. Here's the capital of Kyiv. Red areas occupied since 22, the purple since 14. Now, we don't see any movement up in the north on this map. We know there's still a lot of fighting in here. We don't see anything then in this sort of Kremenar-Seversk front in Blyatmobile, but we do have reports that there are movements in here. So let's talk about this from Syriac. So we see this is then the chalk quarry here. Russian army continue to take trenches around the eastern part of the chalk quarry. So you can just see, I don't know why it uses yellow here, but just in here said that Russia's taken some positions. And then secondly here, shows just a different angle. Following the capture of the trench system, Russian army began to climb to take up positions in Belyarivka chalk quarry. Now, we know that in some areas of Ukraine, very hilly, in some it's very flat, and some there are unnatural hills made, like, say, the waste of the chalk quarry here. But we're in Belyarivka here, and we will see that it will be a very tactical location if Russia can get the high ground here. Maybe not for weapon systems or soldiers, but for things like targeting systems, optical systems, it will be in here. Very, very important for the dead ground and low ground behind this. The reason there's no movement here is this is more hilly than other areas, and definitely in Ukraine's favour of these hills, as well as the forest area here on the Kremenar front. We know that Russia does have the manpower, armour and artillery advantage and the air advantage, but that gets limited when you're in a closed space like in forest areas like this. So just interesting to look at the lay of the land in here and how this will become more and more relevant as there's more movements. Now, let's move down, of course, then into Bakhmut. Now, this map, we didn't have updates for 2 days, but what we do see, let's step back to the 7th when I last had this map update. We do see an expansion of control out near Borodnivka, and then the map update to today, we see Borodnivka coming a lot under Russian control, as well as a large advancement out just to the north of Ivanovsky, between Kremovy and Ivanovsky, out through here, of course, heading up through these regions. Now, before we look at what Syriac says, I just want to come down into this area and have a look at the lay of the land here, as I think this is going to become more and more relevant. Sorry, I was a bit lost for a minute. So the Syriac map actually shows just a little bit less here, but let's have a look at where this forest region is. So let's say this one here is where the MOD map is saying that the Russians are up to. So it's really saying that it's up to here. Now, we did say that moving through this closed up ground may be more difficult for Russia than open ground, but we do see that Russia is gaining more of the high ground leading into the first areas of Chasiv Yar, and will supply or provide then flanking fire onto these areas and more troop movements down here if they're able to continue pushing. So this is a very tactical movement in here and strategically important to continue down here, and we have seen that continue pushing. So let's then have a look at what Syriac is showing the difference today. So Bakhmut, as well as we have one actually from Noel Reports, Ukrainian source too. So we're seeing this movement up through here. Now these are lining up a fair bit. We see these two tree lines as well as movement down in here. So pretty close, as well as near Borodnivka. So yes, it may show in some different areas, but all in all, pretty similar. Russian army continue advancing in the last parts of Borodnivka, so 95% under Russian control, as Ukrainian army is retreating from Kalinina from this axis, and not from fortified warehouses north of it. On the other hand, Russian forces took control over the rest of the fortifications east of the microdistrict and the eastern part of Mount Baba, including the ones located at the foot of this mount and northwest of Ivanovsky. So we're talking down then in this area where we looked at where that is raising up and the movement out of Borodivka. This is where the main changes are being shown between grey zone and controlled region. Now, let's then have a look at what then Noel Reports says in here. So this isn't the easiest to see, but we're talking about, again, Borodivka, where we did see this change here. And I believe this is looking pretty similar for where he shows then the change for this is where then the train line is running through here. So, of course, it's saying a lot less control on his map up into the town itself. But, again, lines up enough for us to say there's definitely been movement in there. Now, let's just move down a little bit more. Of course, this is the Avdiivka front. Let's step back 2 days. We see movement out near Kremenik, out from Krasnohorivka. So that is what we've seen over the last couple of days on maps in this region, from Suryak as well. They don't show any movements in this sort of front of Avdiivka itself, but Pervomayski, it does show an expansion of grey zone here. We do know there's a Russian movement in Vodyany as well as Pervomayski here. Now let's have a look. Noel Reports, Ukrainian map. What I should say is yesterday, if you did or didn't watch the video, we do know that there was Russian troops seen right out into sort of this area here. So there is an expansion of control, and we do then see this on this map, and these are very different from each other. If we look at where these two reservoirs are, it does expand a fair bit, or not too much, but it does expand out from here, as well as this expansion up into the north. So this is then this tree line that it's saying that this is under red as well between the two Ukrainian maps. But we don't have a Surik map update here. Krasnohorivka, of course, where we saw the Blyatmobile. No changes, no change in Mariinka. Then we come down into Novomyalivka. We do have a change here. Not too much. We do see an expansion of control. This isn't lining up with the Noel Reports map or the Suryak in here. This is showing far less control than both of then those maps. But we do have a Suryak here. So, of course, what you can see, this is where this reservoir is here, so it's saying that it's right up through and then halfway through this paddock, so where my cursor is. Russian army took control over new plantations north of Novomyalivka. So there are changes on the maps, but it is still limited, and there are areas lining up. There are areas not lining up, a bit of everything. Legends, I'm sorry this one went a little bit longer. I had a lot more than I actually thought when I began. Have a great day. Look after yourself. If you like to support me, there's links down below, but otherwise, yeah, just spend all the time with you that you can with those that you love, and don't work too hard. Thank you very much. I'll speak to you soon. Bye-bye.